Talk Show. Recorded live.
Hello and welcome to Castle of Horror, the show dedicated to horror movies and awesomeness. This week we continue our retrospective on the Poltergeist series with Poltergeist II, The Other Side. And we are leading all the way up. We're going to be doing Poltergeist 3 next, and then we will finish off with the 2015 Poltergeist reboot remake, which once again I have not seen a single trailer for, and I'm not going to watch one. I'm not going to watch a single thing about that movie until I watch it. That is my commitment to you. Bear in mind, if you haven't seen today's movie, Poltergeist 2, we're going to be talking about it from the perspective of horror fans who have. So warning, spoilers ahead. From Denver, Colorado, I'm your host, Jason Henderson, creator of the Alex Van Helsing novels. With me from Austin is Tony Salvaggio, lead singer of the band Deserts of Mars and co-creator of the comics Psycom from Tokyo Pop and Clockworks from Humanoids. Say hello, Tony.
Howdy.
Howdy. Also in Austin is Drew Edwards, writer for Rockabilly Online and creator and writer of the long-running comic Halloween Man. Say hello, Drew.
I would like to say that I am recording this podcast under the persona of the Reverend Drew Edwards, leader of a utopian death cult.
I love that. Oh, God, you need to start doing, whenever you show up on stage with your wife, you need to start, like, wearing a reverend hat, like one of those old-timey folks.
I will take that under advisement. I think that's a good idea.
I think that would be pretty sweet. Okay, and also joining us from Denver, as always, color commentary from attorney Julia Guzman. Say hello.
Hello.
And, we even have people in the chat room this week. We often do. And so, if you are listening out there live, you need to come into the chat room and tell us what you think. We're always excited to hear from people, just like we do all week on Facebook. All right. According to Wikipedia, Poltergeist, The Other Side is a 1986 supernatural thriller and the second entry in the Poltergeist film series, a sequel to Poltergeist that features the return of the original family who are once again confronted by a spirit trying to harm their daughter, Carol Ann. It received mixed reviews from critics and did not gross as much at the box office as its predecessor, although it was still financially successful. Somebody made sure to write that into the Wikipedia article. Just so you know, it made money. It ended up making over $40 million against a $19 million estimated budget and was nominated for an Academy Award for Special Effects. The film was also nominated for a Razzie Award for Zelda Rubinstein as Worst Supporting Actress. Let me just come right out and say I don't think that's fair. I think she's actually not that bad in this movie. It was followed in 1988 by yet another film, Poltergeist 3. All right, so let's get our opening thoughts. I'm dying to know what you guys thought about this movie. So let's go Drew, Julia, Tony, and then I'll say something. Drew, opening thoughts, Poltergeist 2.
I think it's a mediocre horror film that is saved by the introduction of the Reverend Kane character, which I actually think improves a little bit on the Poltergeist formula by allowing us a solid central bad guy, which is something a lot of haunted house movies really lack. And some really neat special effects. It's nowhere near as good as the first, although I guess that kind of goes without saying. But it's entertaining. It's not great. So I fall under the side of it's okay.
All right. Okay. A solid okay from Drew. Julia, lay it on me. I've actually heard you quote this movie many, many, many times. So maybe Poltergeist is near and dear. Poltergeist 2, near and dear to your heart. Is that the case?
Well,
How do you feel?
It's that there's a couple of really memorable things about it. I mean, I think that Drew hit it on the head when he says a mediocre horror movie, but it's there's a couple of things that are just really, I mean, to me, like I said before to you, I actually forgot that the whole braces scene was in this movie. I thought it was in the first movie because it was such a memorable scene for me when the kid gets like accosted by his braces and like trapped, trapped on the ceiling, attached to the ceiling with his braces. Anyway, that, and then of course, I mean, the thing I quote all the time is, you're all gonna die. I mean, I just love that line
you're
so
all gonna
much.
die now, man.
Yeah, it's so great. He's so fantastic in this film. The bad guy, Julian Beck, Kane, and I really like Will Sampson as well. Taylor, the American Indian. He's just so. I think there's some neat things about the film. I think there's some neat effects. And it moves fast. I mean, it really felt like it went by really fast. So it doesn't drag or anything. So I think it has some good things, but for sure it's not a fraction as good as the first one. But I think it's more enjoyable than certainly Jason did.
Whenever we're in cases like this, I really want to take the time to figure out why. What exactly is it that we're responding to or not responding to? Because it's easy enough to say, oh, I didn't like this as much as the first one, but it's harder to crack the code, or rather figure out the code that they didn't crack. Tony, 1986, Poltergeist II, lay it on me.
I saw this in the theater, and I thought it was super scary, and especially the Reverend character. This time around, I was kind of sad because it didn't hold up for me as well as I had hoped. I hadn't seen it in a long time. I'd seen it since then, but yeah, I wish it had held on as effectively as it did when I saw it in the theater that summer, because I remember especially the scene where he's in the chair as a ghost-like figure, and then even the otherworld part, like the combination of just the chorus and the music and sounds and everything. I remember it being super effective. Not so much this time, and that kind of made me sad. But there's still some really awesome parts. I don't think the sum of it is as good as I remembered, but there's still some really fantastic bits, especially the special effects, especially the practical effects. But I was a little bit sad that it didn't have the effectiveness that it once had on me.
If I can attempt a thesis here, like what goes wrong with Poltergeist 2? Let's imagine there was no Poltergeist, all right? If this movie had come out and were, say, I don't know, just a mid-budget horror film by any given production group who were like, hey, here's our movie about a family, and there's an Indian and there's I don't know, and there's this old death cult and a crazy ghost is after them because the daughter's psychic. Any of those I might have gone with, but what I don't like about this film, I think, and I'm going to be working my way through this out loud, so it's like therapy. What I think I don't like is that the first movie to me had this really clear thesis about, it was about American families and the suburbs and what that was like and the stresses of family life and what was underneath all that, and it was all pictured in these supernatural elements, and there were a lot of chills and goosebumps for me in the first movie. In this movie, I kind of feel like all of that's sort of been lost, and instead what you have is this sort of extremely technical, almost comic booky, which is funny coming from a comic book writer, but a comic booky kind of sequel involving, this death cult over here and kind of a large conspiracy of supernatural hunters involving, the psychic dwarf and the chief from One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, and he knows all this great stuff. And there's just so much technical, crazy supernatural jargon going on, and I just felt like it's lost all of the stuff that made me just thrilled, feel like I was watching something truly visionary in the first one. So like I say, if this had been a direct-to-VOD random supernatural adventure, I think I would have liked it more than knowing that last week when Carol Ann's spirit moves through JoBeth Williams, she goes, oh, I felt her, she moved through me, I smell her on my clothes. There's nothing to compete with that here. So
well, this movie is certainly not as intellectual, dare I say it, or poetic as the first one. I don't think anybody's going to argue.
I'm going to disagree, Jason, because I think that the whole business between Carol Ann and her grandmother is really sweet and poignant. The connection that they have at the beginning with the whole, the psychic thing where she's handing her yarn based on the color, not looking at it, Carol Ann.
Well, it's true.
And then the grandmother telling her, you have this same gift that I had, and then she connects with her after she dies. She calls her on the phone. I mean, it's just, I think that whole thing, and then of course the grandmother's
phone bit, but
the grandmother saves her at the end. I mean, that's a very sweet. That whole thing is very sweet. I liked it.
Yeah, I mean, I can dig all that, but there's also, again, all this jargony kind of stuff. There's a gift, and I have it, and your mother has it, and you have it. And,
so you're not a fan of the Star Wars, the whole the Force thing?
Well, Star Wars is a fantasy, is a science fantasy, whatever you want to call it. It's sword and sorcery with spaceships. This is, I don't know what this is.
It's a horror movie.
Yeah. I don't know.
Well, I mean, I don't see a problem with them finding out that they have some psychic connection or some gift, or why that Carol Ann, of all kids in the world, I don't have a big problem with that. I also when my grandmother passed, I had really extremely vivid dreams. Both of my grandmothers, actually, of talking to them on the phone.
Mm-hmm.
And my grandfather, I knew when my grandfather died because he visited. I felt his presence when he died, and I didn't know that he had died. So I think that is a real.
So I don't know. I don't have a problem. I don't have a problem with that. There's a lot of other weird bits, but I don't think somebody having a psychic connection and bridging that into the two. I mean, this isn't Exorcist 2.
Yeah, this does what all horror film sequels do, though. Like, if you look at the history of horror film sequels, the sequels always expand on the mythology. I mean, they even talk about this in Scream 2, which is, in effect, a commentary on this kind of thing. The first one is a little bit more. First one's a little bit more mysterious. The second one gets to be a little bit more on the nose.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's what we've talked about this before, but it's what Joseph Campbell calls concretizing the myth. That you might really dig the fact that Superman is strong and flies, but as you spend more time telling Superman stories, eventually you talk about the yellow sun gives him that power, and then after a while you go, actually it's not the yellow sun, it's telekinesis, and he believes that he's creating his strength, and then you create a plot about hypnotizing Superman out of his powers, and all of this is just getting farther and farther away to the initial myth of just somebody who's super strong and flies.
Well, I kind of think this in some ways, again, by giving us a villain with a face, I really do feel like that is, I'm not going to say this is as good as Poltergeist, it's not, but by giving us a villain with an actual identity and on-screen presence that's not just a bunch of wonky lights, it does, to me, that is actually kind of an improvement in some ways.
I recommend we go straight to that and talk about the villain, in fact. So very quickly, let me just say that what happens here is things have not gone well for the family since the last movie. They move out to Phoenix, Arizona, where they move in with their sort of loving, kind of oddly New Agey, California-y grandma, who is happy to take them in, and they're trying to get back on their feet. The bad guy here is a ghost. And Drew, do you want to explain Julian Beck as the Reverend Cain and what his plot is all about?
Well, okay, the Reverend Cain is a frontier-era minister who was taking some people, a group of people out to California. It's very vaguely described as they were going to go start a utopian society. And then what he actually did is he starts an apocalypse cult, and he puts them underground where the cemetery from the first movie is eventually built. And he keeps all these people underground, of which, of course, they eventually perish. Julian Beck, the actor who...
Are they the ghosts from the first movie? Are they...
I think he's somehow controlling the ghosts from the first movie and the ghosts of his followers. I mean, that would be...
Yeah, I'm upset by that, because to me, Carol Ann supposedly led all these folks into the light, so they should have got crossed over. And yet in this film, they're all like, oh... they got a taste of Carol Ann and her life force, and so they won her back. And I'm like, what? I thought they crossed over. How? So that implies that they're the same ghost, but it shouldn't be the same ghost, because those ghosts, because Jason had said he thought that
he is somehow, with it through force of personality, making the other ghosts do what he wants.
Yeah, he's
like
it's
I think it's possible. I got the impression that it wasn't so much like all they didn't actually get crossover. It's just there are a lot of not all of those made it. So she touched some of the ones that didn't make it back over, I guess, in the first one. That's always kind of the impression I got.
He is the beast that they talk about in the first movie. And the actor, it has to say, you have to talk about this. The actor is so physically striking, but the sad part about this is because he was dying of cancer when they filmed
He's
it.
only 60. He was only 60 years old.
Yeah, very sad. Stomach cancer, which is one of the ugliest ways to go.
That's what. My grandfather passed that when I first moved to
I'm so
Texas,
sorry.
and it is definitely not a good thing at all. Like it's that's really bad. I mean, I'm kind of impressed that he was able to even do what he does in this movie. It's a very debilitating, terrible thing. So he's amazing.
I really do think, though, the fact that this guy was dying is parts of what gives this character such impact, because it is the one thing that everybody usually talks about when they talk about this movie, and he literally does look like a walking skeleton.
Of course.
You know, he's so unbelievably gaunt.
Yes, he's a very interesting character. When we first meet him, we realize that although he is visible to all the characters in the movie, he is intangible. You know, he can walk through like shrubs and just dematerialize. It's cool that he's a demon who is after Carol Ann. You know, I guess I can kind of live with the retcon that he was involved, that he is a manifestation of the beast. But I could also give a Marvel no prize and suggest that in fact there were like 2 layers of
but they actually says that. It's not just retcon. Tangina actually says that he's become the beast.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I still want to like just sort of write my way around it and say there were like 2
So you have
layers
a problem with the idea that a person can become a demon?
No, I've written stuff like that myself. It's just I was so happy with the sort of.
He liked the idea that the bodies that were in the cemetery crossed over, and then the bodies that were beneath the cemetery of these crazy
in this freaking
cults, that those are now the ghosts that we're dealing with in this film. And I like that idea too, but it's inconsistent with the idea that they got a taste. It's just some of them kind of got a taste of it. I don't know.
I just like it because I feel like for a horror, first of all, for a horror film to become a series, you have to have a villain to latch on to. You just have to. All the popular horror film series. I think that's the reason why we really haven't had anything in a good while that's really stuck around, because they're like, you look at, you know, the characters they try to tack up there, like none of them are very striking. And this character is, it's unfortunate, the circumstances surrounding it, but like this is a very, very memorable villain. And, it's a heavily flawed movie, but the fact that this villain is in it, to me, it makes it worth it. Yeah.
Okay.
It does.
I guess. I mean, I want that to be the case because he is so good, and so maybe that pushes.
And he's really only in it for. He really only has 3 scenes where he's physically on.
Got like 11 minutes or something.
Yeah, he's not even in it, but he's so. Just like the way the physical business. I love it when he's talking to Craig T. Nelson, and Craig T. Nelson's like, "How do you know that?" And he very slowly points his finger to his head. He's like, "Because I'm smart." I love that.
Yeah.
I love
he's
that.
trying to get inside. That was so real. I mean, all of us have dealt with a creepy person who's trying to insinuate themselves closer and closer to you or to get in your door. Man, I mean, you really feel your blood start to pump when he's standing there at the door and trying to see past and try to get inside. Ugh.
It kind of makes me now thinking about it. It kind of makes me want people to go around as almost a jackass kind of thing, but go door to door as this religious guy.
Yes.
Not gonna just try that. Would that work? How creepy would that be?
Yes.
I love the physical business of him, like, taking off his hat, you know,
He's so
like,
good.
the way, you know, and he's just, like,
but
everything
he has
about
mannerisms of people I've known. It reminds me just the way you feel that he is this religious leader from that time. All of his mannerisms reflect this. We knew some Mennonites, obviously, and very nice people, unlike this, but their mannerisms, the taking off of the hat, all of that stuff when they came over, when my parents and I first moved us to Mississippi. When you see this, it very much reminds you of, the older, I would say, some Mennonites or, any of the older kind of religions like
Amish.
Amish. That it's very
Absolutely.
effective. His whole being is that, and then it twists to twist that, and again, I think that's why this evil is so effective as well, because it's taking something that should be good and takes the trust of these people and twists them to something extremely terrible. And I think that's a really effective and very scary thing to deal with.
Well, when you think
and
about
amongst all the other
other
stuff that's maybe not as scary or effective in this. I mean, this is definitely like with the braces thing and all that. This is a very post Nightmare on Elm Street kind of movie.
Well, when you think about Reverend Cain versus Freddy Krueger, who is a lot more overtly evil acting than this, he's sinister, but he's very polite. Like, that's the other thing that I thought was great when he's dealing. He never overtly threatens Carol Ann. He kind of skirts around it. It's
that's what makes him so evil. That's what's perfect. Is oftentimes evil. I mean, it's stated many, many times. It's stated in the Bible. It's stated elsewhere. Evil's kind of at its most sinister when it's appealing, and not
absolutely.
just like boogity boogity boogity. Yeah, it's it's really like.
In that
I think
sense,
that
reminds me of. I don't know if you remember. There was a character in the X-Files called the Well-Manicured Man, who was played by John Neville, this really well-known British actor, and he was one of the most evil and one of the most powerful, but he was also impeccably mannered and would never be so crass as to like physically, directly threaten anyone. And whenever somebody would like speak that way to him, like, well, you're the one responsible for that train crash or whatever, he would just frown and look hurt.
Yeah. Well, Hannibal Lecter, same kind of idea, slightly more, but his whole mannerism is that of like, well, this is the thing I do. Hey, let's not be crass here. I may be a cannibal. I may be evil. I may eat people. I may convince other people to do things. But, let's have some manners. And that's why that's interesting. That's why that's effective.
I also think a lot about the mayor on Buffy. Like, he was more played for laughs than
absolutely.
Cain is.
Good one. No, that's a really good one. Okay, so the other major new player in this film, besides Reverend Cain, who is, again, as we mentioned, fascinating character. The other new player, of course, is Will Sampson as Taylor. Will Sampson was known as and I can't remember why he was in there, but in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, he played the chief. And
of course, escaped from an asylum, and then in this film, Craig T. Nelson refers to him as being escaped from an asylum.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, he seems like an escapee from a mental. That's an in-joke. Yeah, I mean, great stuff. Because that movie ends. This is a spoiler for Cuckoo's Nest. That movie ends with Samson puts a very wounded Jack Nicholson out of his misery, and then like busts a window and runs out into the desert to get away. And here he plays an extraordinarily tall, physically imposing Native American who at the beginning, in some kind of ritual, receives like some ancient Native American power, basically, and so he has mojo, and he's also he's connected to Zelda Rubinstein, the psychic little person from the first movie. So you know, I like. It's weird how they're introducing these new characters that we haven't seen before. So there's Kane as the bad guy, and there's Taylor as the good guy. And just as Kane is cool, this guy I think he's a neat addition to the film.
I have very conflicted feelings about this character.
All right, so lay it on me.
Okay, so you know, not to get too much on my liberal high horse here for a second, but I actually have rationale behind it. My dad is half Cherokee, so you know, like native culture is something that I'm familiar with. I'm not immersed in it, and like even though that's part of my lineage, I don't always give it a whole lot of thought because I don't really give any of my background that much thought, unfortunately, which is it's a failing in me. However, that is there. So when this character is introduced, I kind of like the sort of Native American mystic that this represents. It seems so. I don't want to say racist because it's like portrayed in a positive light, but it is stereotyping. And
you can say racist.
I think Will Sampson is a good. I think Will Sampson is a good actor, but like I.
Well,
okay,
I know
it again.
What?
Seeing it again as in like now, I really thought like within the first few minutes I was like, I wonder. I didn't have time to do the research, but I am really very curious about what the Native American reaction to this movie was, because it is one of those things where it's like it plays to pretty much every stereotype, and a lot of it's positive in the narrative, but it's like
the actual actor Will Sampson actually was a real life shaman. So he actually does this stuff that he's doing in the movie. He does it in real life. So I think if anybody's going to object to it being stereotypical, it would have been him. And I think he probably thought, I mean, I don't know, I haven't read an interview with him, but it seems to me like he was
paycheck, though. Like. I'm
just saying that he actually did this stuff, and in fact, they were so people were so freaked out when they found out that some of the cadavers were real that they had him do an actual exorcism on the set in the middle of the night. Like he was just left to do it on his own.
That even sounds like Hollywood publicity machine stuff to me. I don't know.
I'm telling you, that's what they say.
Look, Will Sampson was really Native American. I'm not saying that this is a case of red face. They didn't put an actor in red face. This could have been so much.
Speaking of Iron Eyes Cody, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, this could have been so much worse. I'm not saying it's the worst thing I've ever seen. Look, I'm really not. I sat through the entire new Lone Ranger with Johnny Depp. Okay, so but I do kind of wonder. Like, I'm watching this movie, and I've seen this movie several times, and I kind of like, my immediate reaction. I know my dad has seen this movie, and my immediate reaction is to call my dad and go, "Hey, Dad, what do you think about the Indian in Poltergeist II? What are your feelings about this? Like how does that make you feel as a Native American?" And like I don't know what he would say. That's really what I come away from that. And like I said, I don't want to be too much knee-jerk PC liberal because I know I do that a lot. And
No, not at all. And I think you could fairly make the comment that any time that you're boiling very complicated people down to a few tropes, you run the risk of being racist essentially by just sort of boiling them down to.
Yeah, and I wouldn't call this racist. Although I'm coming from a standpoint, I look exactly like my Irish American mother. Like if you you guys all know what I look like, but like if I tell anybody that I have any kind of American Indian blood in me, usually people think I'm making it up until they actually meet my dad. So like it is. I'm coming from this from a standpoint of I've had my whole life exist in a bubble of white privilege because of how I look. But I do wonder what my dad would think about this character.
Understood. I think it's a fair point. In this movie, I feel like it comes across a little cheesy, but to be honest, it's only I think
no, I won't call it racist because it's not negative, but I will say that I feel like they're stereotyping.
Well, I mean, I don't know if it's racist or not, but something doesn't have to be positive, doesn't have to be negative to be racist. I mean, that you can be racist just by essentializing something that's actually very complicated. But you know what? I don't even want to get it. The last thing that this horror movie podcast needs to get into is defining racism among the four white people who hosted, Joya, however you want to define yourself. But I just feel like we're the.
I'm a white Latina.
Yes.
It's okay. I'm a McEngine.
Yeah. It's so I don't even I was just having
I like to quote another horror film for this Snoop Doggy Dogg's horror film Bones coined the phrase post-racial, and I've always loved that term, so I stick with that.
I don't even. Yeah, we definitely need to steer clear of this. It's way too complicated and anyway, but I think it's fair to say that Will Sampson, although he's pretty good, I think the way that
he's a good actor. Like
yeah, but I think I agree that all of the sort of Native American stuff in here is problematic and silly. To me, it just felt cheesy. I felt like we were getting farther and farther afield into, as you pointed out, we were adding more layers onto the world of Poltergeist. And the only time this kind of thing ever really appeals to me in a horror movie series is when I finally just go, you know what, forget it. I don't even care anymore about what was awesome about the first one. Now I'm into this weird universe that they're setting up. I'm going to go with it.
Well, sometimes it works in the series advantage. Like I feel like with the Friday the 13th films, like by building up the Jason character over subsequent sequels, that really, I mean, you went from a waterlogged special child in the first movie to a 7-foot-tall undead Hulk in a hockey match.
Not even that. In the first movie, it was just a murder mystery, and it turned out to be the mom.
Well, they got the little boy. They had the little boy at the end, though, is what I'm talking about.
That's right. Yes, he comes out. Yeah, no, true enough. So anyway, all right. So that's Will Sampson. I like Will Sampson a lot. He actually didn't live much longer than this movie either because he was extraordinarily sick, which is a great pity.
Because of the curse.
Oh, for the love! There is no curse.
Whether you believe in the curse or not, Jason, it's a thing. Yeah. People talk about it.
We should discuss the curse. Yes, now is the time that I've promised you 2 weeks in a row. We will discuss the curse. So there is a tradition that has built up around this movie series that the series itself is cursed, probably because of. Well, who knows why? It may be
because of the use of all the real cadavers.
Yes, because of the use of cadavers and skeletons in the first movie. Anyway, the point is, what is the evidence? The evidence out there is a real great lot of tragedy that built up around these groups. Now, many of the actors are still around just fine. Jo Beth Williams is here. Craig T. Nelson is here. Zelda Rubinstein died in 2010 at the age of 76. Those guys are fine.
Well, she's not fine, but she didn't die right around the.
Yeah, well, what I mean is they were not. 76 years old is a normal. I mean, is a well within normal span of life, but and Craig T. Nelson's still doing fine, but you had some just tragedy, true tragedy. Heather O'Rourke, who played Carol Ann, who last was seen on Happy Days, playing a role in there. She succumbed to this terrible illness, and I can't even actually remember what the nature of her illness was. I think it was just a cancer of some kind.
It was, let's see, I just saw it a second ago.
Yeah, intestinal stenosis. Oh,
Yeah,
septic shock. It was just horrible. She was 12 years old when she died. So it wasn't cancer per se. And but this is awful.
The girl that played the older sister, who is not mentioned, the older sister is not mentioned once in this movie. Right. And the reason why, the actress who played her was murdered by her boyfriend.
Yes, that's horrible. She was murdered very soon after the release of the original film. And that happens. That reminds me of, I was thinking about the girl who was in My Sister Sam. And same thing. She was murdered by a crazy ex-boyfriend in that case. So that's the two daughters. Both of them did not live long after their involvement in this series. The Will Sampson died within a year of being in Poltergeist II, and he had let's see, what here does it say? A chronic degenerative condition that affected his heart, lungs, and skin, lengthy illness. So he died in 1987. He's probably already sick when we see him here. He lost a heck of a lot of weight. It makes me sad to want to
Julian Beck, as we said, was dying as they filmed it.
Yes, Julian Beck. Yeah, and if I were look, I don't know the first thing about having stomach cancer. I've heard it's agony, but who knows? Maybe he found it easier to work than not to work. Maybe it was easier to get up and do something than to just be in pain. I don't know. It seems to me that pain can get so bad that you couldn't even get up and do something even if you wanted to. So that's a lot of people who were sick and dying while after making these movies. I don't know. Don't you guys feel like it's sort of tasteless to discuss this as a curse, or where do you land on this? No.
No, not at all. Why is it tasteless?
I don't know. I don't know why it. I feel as though it takes some of the power out of these profound deaths to imagine a supernatural element to it. But do you know why that is?
People always imagine
it's because I don't believe in the supernatural.
I hate to say this to you, but death isn't the concept of death inherently is tied to the supernatural. Whether you believe in it or not, you have to accept that.
Yeah.
So people are going to do that. And secondly, we're not talking about Shakespeare, or something here. We're talking about a horror film franchise. Of course people are going to go there.
Interesting. That's interesting. But and you're right, because if I go, but don't you think that cheapens Poltergeist II? Of course it does.
It's Poltergeist II. It's not. I don't know what it should be.
It is funny that these rumors turn up around lesser movies. 3 Men and a Baby. There's that long-standing rumor that there's the ghost of a hanged person, in the background. Or
I have to say, this might be a lesser movie, but the first Poltergeist isn't. And
no.
I just think, honestly, if there's a lot of deaths hanging around Jaws, the Jaws franchise, that'd be a Jaws curse. I think there's something about this kind of material that people will start to with 3 Men and a Baby. Okay, but I mean, nobody really revisits those movies. Like people, the Poltergeist movies, even the bad ones, people revisit those because they.
That is a very good point. Yeah. No,
I think no matter what, it's not cheapening it to say, hey, it is really weird that there's this movie and all these people who are associated with the movie died. in the same way that we look at the curse of King Tut's tomb, and that's extremely storied. And it doesn't super cheap in the death. It's unfortunate, but it is. I mean, people love to create patterns, and it is very strange and tragic that so many people associated with a single thing. That now the thing could have been they all worked at it. It's because it's such a big movie, or maybe this one isn't, but it is a movie. It could just as easily be the curse of, hey, it's really weird that all those people worked at that taxi dispatcher.
Yeah, no,
is that a curse taxi dispatcher? Anything all that happens, it's very easy for us to do that. I think it's an interesting part of what all has happened with the film, but
This is my final word on this. If I die after doing this podcast and I get links to the Poltergeist curse and people talk about it and they go and find my work for it, fucking A.
Okay.
Like, I'm sorry, but like, if you put yourself out in the public eye, you should be happy people are remembering you, because there are so many actors from Golden Age movies that only movie fetishists remember.
Yeah. No, you're right. I was just thinking about how. So I accept that. I was also thinking about how we used to tell stories about, like, Phil Collins, and if our listeners are too young, they may not remember Phil Collins, but he was a singer for the band Genesis. Anyway, when he went into a solo career, he had a song called "In the Air Tonight," and because there was no internet when this song came around, so all the kids were telling one another that "In the Air Tonight," because it sounded so creepy, was actually a song that Phil Collins had written for somebody that he had witnessed murdering a friend of his. And there was further this legend that built up that Phil Collins had invited somebody to the concert and had a spotlight shown on them while he sang the song, and police were waiting outside to finally... What a great story. But I think it was because the song was so awesome, and you're right. I think these stories build up around art that is like this. You're exactly right, that it wouldn't build up around, 12 Angry Men or The Magnificent Seven. It builds up around stories with a supernatural element. So, okay, all right, fair enough. So there is a curse, and I am sorry. I really don't mean to disrespect it.
Well, we're not saying there's an actual curse or not. That is for somebody better than the four of us to decide. But But
there is the fact that it exists. Yeah. Interestingly, a lot of these lines that Cain... So since Cain died, the actor who played Cain died, his lines had to be looped in, and he was replaced with puppets along the way, which gave us some of the most interesting appearances of that character. One of them is in a really weird sort of writhing rubber totem pole kind of thing. Just crazy. I can't remember at what point this movie shows up, but he's like a whole bunch of like spirit heads on a stick, and he's like smiling, and you can hear his voice talking. And another time, in one of the best scares of the whole movie, Craig T. Nelson is getting drunk, and he slurps.
Yeah, that's another super memorable thing. I always, like, I see tequila bottles, I always think about that scene.
All right, why don't you narrate us the tequila worm, or Tony can, the tequila worm all the way to the weird millipede skeleton thing.
I'll let Tony go for it.
Tony, you want to tell us this sequence? It's crazy.
Well, he drinks the worm and then basically becomes possessed becomes a total jerk, but also
he becomes Cain.
With Cain.
Yes.
And, tries to force himself on his wife, eventually remembers himself, and pukes up a huge, pretty awesomely practical effect worm that then turns into a skeletal torso that is...
It's like based on the H.R. Geiger.
Yeah, it's just so gross and, worms its way around. I don't know who they got to do that, but it's extremely effective. looks like a quadruple
amputee. Yeah.
Yeah. It
Whoa,
has
really?
all of the movements of a quadruple amputee. Just slimy, gross. The ribs stick out like centipede legs. It's extremely memorable, and again, one of those parts that's better than the sum of the movie.
Yeah, it's one of those things that sort of saves the movie from being a total waste.
Yeah.
Because I have to say, I think Craig T. Nelson, when he's possessed, is really freaking creepy. He does a really great job of mimicking Julian Beck's facial acting.
I thought so too. I thought he did a really good job of that.
Yeah, no, that's true. But that is really scary stuff when Craig T. Nelson is being possessed and he's becoming creepy and a rapist and all this stuff. And thankfully, he does not manage to actually, I don't know, I guess for me, thankfully, he doesn't manage to actually rape.
Well, I don't think anybody was wanting him to rape Joe Beth. Well, yeah.
There might be for you.
There might be some real sickos out there.
Tony and I have seen a fair number of horror movies that go farther than you want them to go.
Yeah.
But this one doesn't. This is still what Joe Bob Briggs would call indoor bull stuff, and so he snaps out of it before he actually commits sexual assault. And no, I'm sorry, this is sexual assault. He snaps out of it before he commits rape, and and that's scary stuff. It's very disturbing, and in fact, I don't know. Maybe this is one of the things that had turned me off of it, because it's so disturbing and so odd to have him being possessed. Because in the first movie there was no possession. The family was always.
Yeah, because the possession's well within the framework of the genre.
You're totally right, and even going all the way back to like Spider-Man stories, good guys are getting taken over by evil spirits all the time. That is a plot point that my children recognized when they were like 5. It's like, he's been taken over by somebody. They just instantly get that, that's one variant of bad guy, is the good guy has been taken over by an evil spirit. So that goes on here. I think, Drew, you brought up a point before this movie that for some reason Craig T. Nelson has become a bigger character in this movie than Jo Beth Williams.
Well, I feel like the first movie, the mother, the movie is very much mom-centric, which is fine. It's actually one of the things I like about it. But this movie seems to be, there's a lot of talk with him and Taylor about, you need to become a warrior and you need to step up and be the one that it's very dad-centric.
Protect the family,
Protect the family. This is a much more masculine movie, and it's a lot about Craig T. Nelson's character getting over his sort of surface-level cynicism, because he has to believe in stuff even though he hates it, and he wants to be as snarky as he can about it. It is about him stepping up and defending the family. If you look at he is the one with the hero's journey in this movie. And I kind of wonder if that was a deliberate choice. There was like, look, the first movie, that was a big old salute to mom. Let's make this movie a big old salute to dad. And, it more or less works as that. I think I'm glad that they made that choice, because I think if they'd done the same, if they just done a retread of the first movie and this was, centered on the mom, I think I would have found that a little tiresome, because they did sort of do that to perfection in the first movie. So, I think
you're right.
that was
you're
a smart choice.
Right. There probably wasn't much more profound that we could discuss about the attachment of Jo Beth Williams to her daughter. That you're right.
Well,
that would have been
it's still present. It's just not the central idea.
No, but you're totally right that it would have been awfully repetitive to do it again. So yeah, you're right. It makes sense to focus on Craig T. Nelson. and he's the one who's being tempted a lot and so forth. So
even though he's tempted, but he always comes out of that, which to me is also a very a lot of a man's challenge in the world is getting over his more animalistic self. And
dealing with these kinds of struggles, that he's a man who has. This is all recognizable stuff. It's not 82. It's now 86. He has lost his job. He's struggling to make ends meet. He's sponging off of his mother-in-law, and I love that this family is still pretty together, considering all the crap that.
Although they don't own a TV, which is great.
I love that. I also thought. Did you guys notice that the fashions are way more properly 80s in this film?
Sure.
Like the first movie, filmed in '81, and it still feels like Drew and I were talking about last week, that sort of Friday the 13th Part 1 era that is still almost 70s-ish. But this is Part 2, and we are way 80s now with the structured blouses and just really just horrible clothes to me. All right, we need to talk about the finale, which has how does this work? They all end up going into the other side. In other words, that's the subtitle of this movie, is Poltergeist II, The Other Side, and the big payoff of the film is they show us what the other side looked like, which was where Jo Beth Williams had to jump into in the last movie to grab Carol Ann and bring her back.
And you kind of understand now why it is that Carol Ann and anybody else who goes in there is like, where are you? Because they're just floating in white space.
It's like you're floating around extra special effects left over from Xanadu.
Yeah.
Although, when I first saw it in the theater, the choral music and the voices and all of it together was pretty scary. I don't know why now, because it wasn't as scary this time around. For whatever reason,
the music
it was
great.
really
I think
effective.
it's really good music.
Like, it was really effective for me then.
The optical effect of them hovering around in this afterlife that they've created is some of the special effects here hold up very well. Like the one that we were just talking about, the worm monster, is that looks good. That will look good 10 years from now. It's like it's gonna take them a while to roll out a better worm monster than that. But
that's true.
The Xanadu thing, we don't.
The opticals here, they're dated. Like they could do like
but
now.
The Jerry Goldsmith score is awesome. I think it's
the music is great.
Well, I like it in here. I love the chanting. I like the choral music here. There are points when they're wandering around in the house, when suddenly it sounds like The Omen too much. There's a lot of like Latin chanting and crap, and I was just like, oh God, this is like an exploitative. It's like somebody made an exploitation movie within the actual series that it was going to be exploited.
I can't wait to do Poltergeist 3 with you, Jason. This is gonna be a wonderful experience. You will finally come to the hate.
Oh man! You just reminded me that we have to do Poltergeist 3.
This is going to be fun, y'all. We're gonna get to destroy a movie together.
All right, I'm looking forward to that, indeed.
It makes me more sad that I have to spend money to rent that. Like, that's money. That's money that Poltergeist 3 people should maybe pay us to rent. Because
whoever's still around,
I don't know it. There's a good reason.
Still make money off that.
Yeah.
You don't understand. We get to destroy Poltergeist 3.
Yeah, but everybody who's seen it has destroyed Poltergeist 3. Like, it's not it's a fish in a barrel.
I have no idea what that movie's about.
Prepare to destroy a movie like Godzilla destroys Tokyo.
That's too kind and slanderous against Godzilla. in some way.
No,
I don't know.
It's just gonna be beautiful.
The fact that you mentioned Godzilla and Poltergeist 3 together kind of offends me.
This is going to be a beautiful bonding experience. I am happy about the fact that you will all join me in my hate.
Well, you might actually. It's possible, Tony, that maybe Poltergeist 3 will just turn up on TV within the next week, and you know.
I think
it's actually on YouTube. I could be wrong.
It may be.
Well, I don't know.
A lot of guys, when people post things, if something's on YouTube, I assume that it is okay because it's YouTube's job to take pirated stuff down. Having said that, a lot of people post things on YouTube and it just says, this is an hour and a half long, but actually it's not really the movie. If you click this link, we'll take you to our crazy, dangerous virus pirate site.
That's a fool there and there. Why wouldn't I click on that from, it says like, notavirus.exe? That sounds great.
Right?
I have to say, though, speaking of things that do hold up, the underground chamber.
Oh, man,
with
that's
all
good.
the
that's
sort
scary as hell.
And it looks very. The funny thing is for a movie that does not have any involvement of Tobe Hooper, it looks very Tobe Hooper.
Yeah, that part. I mean, the sound design and everything in there is really fantastic and just creepy and grotesque, and the tragedy of what that just evil man has done is all there.
Absolutely.
On display, and that is effective.
Well, and the scenes that you see that the mom has, she has those visions about what happened, and then she's like so upset, remembering that there's children and there's all these people who have been told that it's the end of times and that they're just all like reaching out for help and they're trapped, and I mean it's
no, that is a horrible thought.
Well,
you're
looks
exactly
a
right.
lot like the Brian Boland, anorexic Joker in those sequences too. Like he's got like that really wide grin, and I just kind of wonder if that was an influence, on the way he draws that character, because
honestly, that rictus is amazing. Like his grin is so creepy and effective. Just it is still a shame that how that was why he's so gone and everything, but it really, really sells it.
Yeah. Well, when was The Killing Joke? Killing Joke, 1988. So 2 years after this, it's possible that he could be an influence.
If you look at the way the Joker is drawn, like there were some thin Jokers, but not like that. And there was also like more variety, because there's some people that drew him as like this big, broad-shouldered, bruiser of a guy. Yeah. So, it was really only with The Killing Joke that kind of became the uniform look for the character.
No, that's true. That's totally true. By the way, my favorite Joker is still the one from The Dark Knight Returns, where he's very gaunt and kind of, very sort of model-esque. He's got the short cropped green hair and square jaw and the high cheekbones.
But it's a more handsome take on it.
Yeah. Yeah, there's an actor that he's patterned after.
Personally, not to turn this into the Joker podcast, I always prefer versions that are a little bit more physically imposing, personally. Like I've never been super into the Brian Boland version, even though it's certainly iconic.
I mean, certainly, there's room, for, especially since now that's sort of a deviant version, because you don't see many of the bigger, broader Jokers. We're definitely far afield from Poltergeist 2 at this point.
Sorry, I turned it temporarily into a comic book podcast.
No, it's quite all right. Let me just say, I totally dig that the grandma saves Carol Ann. Love it. Love it, love it. Mm-hmm. I love that she comes out as an angel. I think you are made of stone. If that doesn't move you, it's just wonderful. Mm-hmm. So, yes, I can dig that. Yes, it's cheesy, but yes, I can totally dig it. I like cheesy. This works for me. That's fine. So
well, it was set up very well with the stuff on the phone earlier, which is some of the best stuff in the movie.
Yes. Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. The fact that the grandma calls when she's on the way out, that was wonderful. I mean,
plastic
okay. So let's get our final thoughts, and then we'll do endorsements. So final thoughts. Drew, you're first this week. You handsome devil. I know that I would.
Wow. Jeez. What did I do? Oh. My heart's got all a pitter-patter, a compliment from Jason. Oh, I almost think like I'm Tony.
Yes.
Oh, man. This will never...
Something
will never die.
What are my final thoughts? My final thoughts are the same as my opening thoughts. I think this is an entertaining, if flawed, 80s, very 80s horror film. And if you are a fan of horror films from the 1980s, you will probably get a kick out of it. You know, is it a classic like the original is? No, but it's got some stuff that keeps it from being a total waste of your time, and that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Very cool, very cool. Julia, final thoughts. Poltergeist 2. Poltergeist 3.
I liked it. I like the like I said, I love the bad guy. I think he's the best. I love him singing about God in his holy temple or whatever he sings, and I just think that he's great. I think that the ally of the Indian is great. And some of the effects are really good, and the stuff with the grandma. So I mean, I think there's just some great things. Like I said, some memorable moments that I've often thought of as being just iconic. And it's not the strongest film ever, but I certainly enjoy it. It certainly goes by fast. I mean, it's like 82 minutes, something like that. It's not a long film.
It's a much shorter film than the first movie.
Yeah, so even if you hate it, it's only, you can live for the hour and 20 whatever minutes.
Mm. Tony, what are your thoughts?
I hold the same thing. I was a little disappointed I didn't like it as much as it didn't hold up to my memory, but it's still, the parts that do hold up are extremely effective. I think, as far as old guy characters, this goes toe-to-toe with the tall man as far as just being iconic in that same way. The fact you have an evil, malevolent spirit singing that has twisted religion to his own ends is extremely effective and scary. The otherworld stuff visually may not hold up, but I think it's an interesting place to take it, to kind of see that. Again, like I said, the practical effects are really, when they're good, they're really good. I think those parts, I wish that all those bits equaled a better movie, but it is still fun to revisit, and I still dig it, even if it's not as good as I had remembered it, I guess.
All right. Thank you very much. I wouldn't add much other than, I was disappointed that I felt bad watching this movie. The movie, parts of it I really enjoyed, and so many times I have sat here on this show and said, all I really ask from a movie is that there be one good thing to hold on to. And this movie has 3-4 good things, several things that I really enjoyed. Julian Beck's fantastic. The torso creature is great. I love Grandma coming out of the afterlife. All that's working great. But it's such a step down from what was beautiful about the first movie that I was just kind of depressed about it all.
It does play a lot of laughs, which didn't seem out of place. It definitely does also feel like a post, it's post Nightmare on Elm Street 2, and with the braces thing and a few other bits, it kind of feels that it's firmly entrenched into what 80s horror was.
That's
at the
sort
time.
of these crazy setups involving, sort of poetic justice / injustice involving some shtick about your life.
There's a lot of that
your
going
record
on.
player or your your phone or your braces. Yeah, and I don't know.
By the way,
go ahead, Drew.
As far as that stuff goes, it's not as gonzo and crazy as waxwork.
No, of course.
No,
but
I
it's
love
in that,
waxwork. Yeah.
But it's in that, like, it's clearly become part of that 80s horror thing that was going on.
Whereas the first one was such a prestige piece. But then haven't we been here before? Remember how we talked about how Jaws is this prestige piece, but Jaws 2 is pure.
Well, Spielberg has no involvement. It's neither Spielberg nor Tobe Hooper, near as I can tell, have any real involvement with this.
No, you're right, and it is an interesting coincidence that that's the case, where the second Jaws movie is pure pulp, whereas the first one somehow is like all the way to legend. And there's been other movies like that. Halloween, the first movie, is, I think, a truly fine film that doesn't have to say a great deal to say a lot. Whereas the second one, we all really love. I really loved the second one, but it is a trashy, pulpy film. It has none of the wisdom of the first movie.
But I tell you that for the second Poltergeist, I saw it when I was a kid, and I was I think we were in Galveston, but anyway, we were staying in a hotel or like condo or something, and I just remember watching the film there, and then having to sleep like on a cot next to a mirror. And being completely freaked out by the mirror because of that damn bathroom. Like having to like rearrange my head so that I wasn't looking in the mirror.
That bathroom bit with the zombies is really effective. Like the zombies in the mirror is really effective.
Very good. Yes, no, it is. There's a lot of really scary bits involving the parents here. Okay. Let's do our endorsements. I'm curious as to what you guys got going on. So, starting with Drew. Drew, what do you have to endorse for us this week?
I have three endorsements. I first off want to say Austinites, people in Austin, come out to the Austin Nerd Cave at the Spider House Ballroom this Sunday. It is from 1 to 6. There is going to be nerdcore hip-hop arcade game tournaments, comic book vendors, including myself. We will be there spreading the good word of Halloween Man. And also one of my favorite local punk rock bands, Millipede, is going to be playing. And they are a band that essentially, they are the Misfits, only instead of horror film stuff, they do nerdy stuff. So it's like D&D, Star Trek, Legend of Zelda.
They have a song about G.I. Joe Cobra.
Yeah.
That is amazing. The Millipede's awesome. And some of my favorite people are in it as well.
Yeah, Millipede, the lead singer sings out of a Hulk hand. I love the Millipede. So for all these reasons, you should come to the Austin Nerd Cave. Also, your homework assignment, people, is to go on Comixology and buy issue 10 of Halloween Man, which I can now say is the last issue that's going to be coming out through Monsterverse. We are amicably parting ways. However, the series is going to go on, and this is the debut of our new regular artist, and he is a beast of a talent. He did a great job of this issue. You should check it out. It's only $1.99. Trust me, totally worth it. You get 52 pages. This thing looks beautiful. Couldn't be happier with. What now?
That's amazing. That's a lot. That's big. 52 pages is huge.
Oh, we like to give people a lot of bang for their buck. That's our philosophy. Yeah. Although on the more expensive side of things, this last week, I was lured back into the world of mainstream comics by Secret Wars #1, and there's been a lot of back and forth about it online. A lot of people saying that they didn't like it. A lot of people saying that they love it. I loved it. I thought it was great. I've reread it 10 times over the last week. I love Jonathan Hickman. He's one of my favorite mainstream superhero writers from the last few years. His run on Fantastic Four was fabulous. This looks like this is going to heavily feature both the Ultimate Reed Richards and the regular Reed Richards. So if you're a Fantastic Four fan, please know that also looks like Dr. Doom is going to have a big role in this. So I'm really excited. But aside from all that, the first issue has maybe the best Punisher scene I've seen in years. In years. Literally years. It's only a page. But it makes the Punisher single-handedly cooler than anything that he's been in years. And it's also, that's what it is. It's just the pinpoint of it. This issue also features the Ultimate Universe fighting the regular Marvel Universe. So it's so much cool stuff wrapped up with a really awesome Alex Ross cover. This is a perfect storm for me. I love Jonathan Hickman. I love the Fantastic Four. I have a lot of nostalgia for the original Secret Wars. I love stories that deal with alternate realities clashing up against each other. This is just pure, this is good mainstream superhero comics, and that's my read on it. There's going to be a lot of debate. I've heard people say that they thought it was confusing. I haven't picked up a Marvel comic in years, and I followed along just fine. So I highly recommend it.
All right. Okay. All right. Then that's the first. Well, no, it's not the first endorsement, but it's the best endorsement I've heard so far for the new Secret Wars. That's awesome. Okay, cool, man. Julia, do you have anything to endorse this week?
Not particularly, except just that the series finale for Mad Men is coming up. So if you've watched any of it over the last bunch of seasons, maybe tune in on Sunday because it's good stuff. That's about it.
Very cool.
I love Mad Men, although I'm going to have to wait till that's on Netflix.
Mm-hmm.
Was it? They seem to be about a year back on Netflix.
Yeah, they just put up a bunch from a month or so back, and we already pile drived our way through all those. So
outstanding. Yeah. Tony, anything to endorse?
Yes. Mad Max Fury Road. See it, and then see it again, and you should see it again. I have friends who disagree with that, but that's tough luck. I think they're wrong, super wrong as wrong can be. I've been lucky enough to see it twice through press screenings, thanks to my friend Rodney, and then getting to
You've seen it
my
at
friend
two different
Jeff.
press screenings?
I saw it at press screening, and then I saw it at an Alamo screening that we were embargoed on until today, and George Miller was there, who is a super nice guy. Also Hugh, who plays Toe Cutter in the original, and Immortan Joe in this one. An amazing Shakespearean actress. His PSA for Don't Talk for Alamo, I hope they show it over and over. It is something. He is an amazing guy and had hurt himself pretty badly, had a hip injury, still flew to the U.S. from Australia to do press and to come to Austin and talk with us. How many actors, much less older actors, are going to do that? This guy is awesome.
No,
George Miller is great. This movie, holy cow. And some of the best, some people are going to have a problem with 3D. That's fine. I don't think it needs the 3D. But I will have to say, the 3D was done in post. It was supervised by Miller. It is some of the best 3D, post 3D I've seen. It's not necessary for the film, see it if you want. I'm not going to say that, but I was pretty impressed. And I'm pretty picky about crap like that since my job now is rendering things. So digital and CGI is part of my job. So I'm pretty picky.
Let me ask you a question.
It is awesome.
Do you feel like Fury Road? Because I have not seen it. Okay, and I've loved watching the trailers, but I'm going to try not to watch any more before I watch it. But do you feel like Fury Road respects the feel of the road of like Road Warrior and those like the
absolutely.
post-apocalyptic
I mean,
world?
they people ask George Miller like, well, why now? Why'd you do this? And he said, well, these characters, these things were clicked like these. As a writer, as a director, these things are in your head, and they, you wait a while and they come back. I mean, originally this was, a project from 2001. And as you and I both know, having had a project that took 15 years to make it anywhere, roughly, give or take, that, sometimes things happen. And, yeah, I mean, to be honest, Charlize Theron just rules in this movie. And regardless of what people may say, oh, this CG, that CG, there's so much practical effects in this. Like, I mean, they have safety harnesses and stuff, but they're hanging Tom Hardy off the side of trucks and pulling him on poles where they actually had people attached to cars, attached to poles attached to cars that sling them over and then pull people off of a truck. Like, that's a thing that wasn't green screen, by the way. Miller, I mean, anybody who's like, oh, he's cashing in, he's doing this. This is a man who, when Australia had its first huge deluge in the area he was supposed to film in 15 years and turned it from a desert into, like, a wildflower, like, it bloomed. He took all the trucks and crap, shipped them to Africa, and filmed in Africa. So, obviously, he wanted to get this film made. So, I'll go toe-to-toe with friends of mine who are hating on it, and whatever, they can go not enjoy things. That's fine. You can.
Why do I feel like I know who you're talking about?
Oh, you probably know who I'm talking about, and they can go not enjoy whatever many myriad of things they don't enjoy. That's fine. Since we live in a world that progresses past the 80s into the future, and we can't stop that, and we don't live in a time bubble that stays in the 80s, I'm okay with this new thing. A lot of people have, anybody who's saying, oh, if it doesn't have Mel Gibson, guess what? Mel Gibson's older. I think Tom Hardy does a great job of being Mad Max.
He also really is mad now.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
I'm
don't know.
completely okay with Tom Hardy's Mad Max in this movie.
Even Mel Gibson will admit that he's too old to play this character, unless the character were old. He couldn't play the young road warrior.
It's ambiguous too, like where it takes place. I mean, I've heard people say, it takes place between the first and second movies, but it kind of.
That was my question: is where
could be.
Like,
Tom Hardy when he's done up like Mel Gibson, I will say, or Mad Max, he looks uncannily like a young Mel Gibson. I got to like, and frankly, I feel like I've gotten to a point where, like, I think you can recast these characters if you do it carefully. Like, characters like, I love the Bela Lugosi Dracula, but I also love the Christopher Lee, and I love the Frank Langella, and I love all these other different takes of it. Like, it's okay to see new actors taking on a well-worn character.
This isn't a reboot either. This is just, hey, by the way, this guy is Mad Max. This isn't we don't see a new, hey, Mad Max, you're mad. I heard you lost your family. Or just some crap like that.
It's just another episode.
It's just this guy's in the wasteland and some really, in the same way that you can get, some awesome guys playing Dracula. It's less loose than that, of course. It's an actual franchise, but I'm going to see it again for the third time this Thursday, and I may see it again on IMAX because I think it's beautiful. But
I know all my hot rodder, rockabilly, car fetish friends are really psyched up for it because, obviously
Yeah, there are so many awesome, crazy cars and explosions and so much of it is practical. And the female characters, there's a wide range. It's not just like, oh, by the way, look how tough. Like, the reality is there's tough female characters, and there's not as tough female characters. Like the way everyone is portrayed in this world, I thought was pretty awesome. It wasn't pandering. It just is what it is. And like I told Jason, Jason had a character that was in a game that never got shipped, and she's the prototype for our character Molly Vane, even though she's nothing like that character. Jason, they made that the Molly Vane you thought of, the one who's also the pirate in the Diablo clone. Dude, you're gonna freak out. It's like they took it from your mind and made Charlize Theron that character. Especially by the end, I don't know, you're gonna flip out.
Okay.
I think.
I totally.
And I know this is bordering on hyperbole. Maybe I'm overselling it, but in a world full of dark, gritty, this is gritty. This is lots of action, lots of destruction. But it's vibrant. It looks beautiful. In a world where everything's dark and grim, it's kind of interesting to see a crazy, red-paleted, in-your-face kind of thing. And if you like, this kind of wanton destruction and insanity, go out and support this. Something that's not a reboot, that's, again, a director who has taken all this time and comes back with this. This isn't soft-pedaling that. This is a director that you like, or I like. If you like The Road Warrior, if you like Thunderdome, I don't think is as successful as Road Warrior. But if you like The Road Warrior, it's not very often that you get a director who can come back to their roots and make this. But again, I hope I'm not too much overselling it. I mean, people can chastise me and go, "You led us astray," but I really enjoyed it a lot.
For what it's worth, Tony, I've heard nothing but positive things about it so far.
Well, I'm waiting for the my friend who I saw it with can be a very harsh critic, and when we're both smiling ear to ear, when I'm watching him smile, my friend Rodney, I think somebody's done something well.
I've heard that this is also one of the few movies where if you can see it in 3D, you should.
I overheard George Miller talking about he had to do it. He had to be responsible, and he was working on it up until he had to ship prints, basically.
Mm-hmm.
I guess nowadays it's on a hard drive, but whatever. That's rare as well. But he wasn't going to let it ship out unless he had done it. I mean, when dust was flying, I blinked. When there were expansive shots, it's more about depth into the field and not just, hey, I'm going to shove everything out at you. There's a couple of gags here and there, kind of gimmicky gags. I was impressed. It's not every day that you see something that's post-processed 3D that looks like that, and it shows because the director actually took the time to work extremely hard to make that. I wouldn't say, if you're looking at, if you don't like 3D, of course, it doesn't suffer in 2D. I've seen it both. But I really enjoyed it. Fist pumping, just like, yeah, and then, holding your hand up to your face going, oh, holy crap, that happened. You feel it when people, in the same way you feel it when people die on The Road Warrior, when things happen in this. It's hard to break. I'm not saying I still enjoy Road Warrior perhaps more, but that's what I grew up on, so it's really hard to say, this is, it's hard to be objective. But, yes, see this, support this. I don't know what it's up against, but I hope it crushes whatever it is. I recently saw Avengers, and hands down, maybe it was the fact I'd seen this twice before I saw Avengers, but I came out of it going, I'm kind of waiting until Thursday to see this again. So
wow.
And the Avengers isn't bad. It's just that's the reality of where my head is at. And heck, the song "Cities on Fire" from Deserts of Mars is based on this and Fist of the North Star, which Fist of the North Star is based on Road Warrior hand. Like,
there's
no bones about it. And so, being able to tell George Miller, hey, here's this song I wrote because of you, that was pretty cool, and I it lived up to everything I wanted to. Yeah, it lived up. The movie to me is, I was cautiously optimistic in really, especially how almost Gilliam-esque the production of this movie has been, how problematic it's been. To see it and be that excited.
Well, remember we saw the Gilliam Don Quixote that fell apart, and you're right. This could have wound up like that. All right. Well, I will definitely stop you there but my God, that's a very strong endorsement of Mad Max Fury Road. So by the time we get together again, at least by the time we finish this retrospective, I can probably let you know if I agreed. Although I probably will.
Yeah, I want to know. I want to hear from you guys because it means a lot, and I know I'm in the realm of hyperbole, but I hope that other people feel the same way I do.
No, I think that's really strong. Okay, very quickly, this is the 11th of May that we're recording, but Denver Comic-Con is coming up real soon, and a lot of people are going to be there. I'm going to be there. Two things. I'm going to do a comics writers panel on Saturday, May 23rd at 4:30. And then I'm going to be doing a kids presentation on Sunday, May 24th at 2 in the afternoon, how to create a world in novels. And we're going to do it like getting the audience involved in coming up with world building and stuff like that. I cannot wait. Denver Comic-Con is just getting bigger and bigger every year. So
he's taking our daughters, and our oldest daughter is a Doctor Who freak who she wears a red bow tie every day to school. And she is so excited to get to meet Karen Gillan and Amy Pond and Rory, and I don't know who else is going to be there, but she's so psyched.
Yeah, so she's like super psyched, and my 9-year-old's going for the first time, so that's going to be really cool.
Mm-hmm.
So, and one more thing, I'm going to be interviewing a writer named Michael Aronovitz, who's the author of a new novel called Witch in the Wood. I'm going to record that tomorrow night. Depending on when you pick up our podcast, you might actually see that before this episode, because Bleeding Cool often puts the interviews on Thursdays and a new episode on Friday. Regardless, we got a new interview this week, and it's going to be awesome. Guys, this was a lot of fun discussing a movie that I wasn't that excited about, but I loved the conversation, and that's the way it should work. So have a fantastic week. We will be back here next week for Poltergeist 3.
I am waiting with bated breath. This is going to be so much fun.
So that's going to be
I'm
awesome.
sharpening my eye teeth all week.
Yes. And yes, if you have questions for us or just want to yell at us or completely disagree or want to call us any kinds of names, we'll respond to all of those things. Just come to the Facebook page for the Castle of Horror podcast. Those of you from Bleeding Cool, we really appreciate you being here. Leave us reviews. Leave us reviews, especially on iTunes, because that helps people find the show. Find a friend who has never heard of our show but you think would dig it. Bring them to a small room, tie them to a chair, lock them in, and play.
Don't tie them to the chair.
An episode. Julia says not to do any of the things I just described, but definitely play an episode for them. We want new fans, and we love to have them. So thanks a lot. You guys have a wonderful week. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.
Good night, John Boy.
Night.